Welcome, everyone. We are really glad to have you all here today at our Orientation to Instruction section, which is being hosted by the Instruction Section Membership Committee. We are going to have about 30 minutes or so of presentation for you all, and then there will be plenty of time for you to ask questions. You can also ask questions as you're going. Please go ahead and just post those in the chat, and we'll be responding to that as we go through. So we'll go ahead and jump into our orientation. And we'll get started with introductions of the folks that are going to be speaking to you today. And we'll go ahead and pass it off first to Veronica.
Hi, my name is Veronica Ariano Douglas. I am the current Instruction Section Chair, and I'm Head of Teaching and Learning at the University of Houston.
And Carrie.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carrie Forbes. I am the current Vice Chair of the Instruction Section, and my day job is the Associate Dean for Public Services at the University of Denver.
And Ross.
Hi, my name is Rosalind Busey. You can also call me Roz, and I am the chair of the Instruction Section Membership Committee, which put on today's orientation session. I am also a research and instruction librarian for the humanities at the University of Nevada, Reno, where I also coordinate instruction for our freshman composition information literacy.
Thank you all. And so we'll just do a few more quick introductions. Laura.
Yeah, so I'm Laura Birkenhauer. I am one of the members of the IS Membership Committee and the subcommittee charged with presenting this orientation. And my day job is Student Success Librarian for Campus Engagement at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio.
Thank you. And Abby.
Hi, I'm Abby Kazowitz-Shear. I am also a member of the IS Membership Committee and the Promote Membership Participation Subcommittee. And I am currently the interim head of the Department of Learning and Academic Engagement at Syracuse University.
Thank you. And I am Jane Hammonds. I am also a member of the Instruction Section Membership Committee and the subcommittee that organized this orientation, and I am the Teaching and Learning Engagement Librarian at The Ohio State University. So this is just a quick overview of what we're going to be doing here today. So we're going to talk a little bit about what Instruction Section is, what we do, talk about the resources that are available to you through the Instruction Section, what the Instruction Section looks like, so what the structure is. Then we'll share a little bit about how you can get involved in Instruction Section and talk about some of the upcoming events that various committees in the Instruction Section have planned for this year. And then we'll have plenty of time at the end for questions. So we'll go ahead then and jump into our content. The first thing we're going to talk about is what does Instruction Section actually do? And for that one, I'm going to hand that over to Abby.
Yes, so in this section, we're going to talk about, we're going to give an overview of the Instruction Section, including our charge, the kind of work that we engage in, and resources that are available to you. Next slide, thank you. So this is our charge. It is available on the website as well. The Instruction Section, I won't read the whole thing, but the highlights are the Instruction Section enhances the ability of academic and research librarians to advance learning, teaching, and research with respect to information literacy in higher education. So what does this mean in practical terms, and how can the Instruction Section support you in your instructional work? And that's what we'll be talking about today. So the Instruction Section manages a variety of websites and resources for you. We have a poll that we're going to launch just to get an idea of what resources you may have already used in your work through the Instruction Section. So if you can go ahead and launch the poll, thank you. So we'll just take a minute or so and let us know if you've searched the Primo website, if you've reviewed any of the information literacy and the disciplines guides, read any featured teaching librarian profiles, read any of our instructional technologies, tips and trends, if you've used anything in the Framework for Information Literacy Sandbox, or none of the above. If this is your first time and you're not really familiar, that is totally understandable as well.
We have about 83% participation. We'll give it just a few more seconds. Okay, so we'll give it just 5 more seconds, and I think we're ready to close the poll.
All right, great. Thank you for participating in the poll. It looks like a large number, about 50% have used the Framework Sandbox, which is great. And then there's a nice split with people using all of the other resources, and a fair number who have used none of the above, which I said is, that's why you're here today at the orientation, to learn about what is available so that you can take a look at these things later on. All right, thank you so much. And we will be talking about many of these resources later on in the presentation, so I'm not going to go into too much detail right now, but we just wanted to give you an idea of the some examples of resources that are available from the instruction section. All right, so next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so what do we do? Our work is focused on several different areas, including pedagogy, technology, higher education environment, and professional development. We support pedagogy through our Primo database of instructional materials, our Framework Sandbox, which many of you are familiar with, ideas for using the Framework for Information Literacy for higher education in instructional settings. We provide information on teaching with technology through our instructional technologies, tips, and trends. Next slide, please. We support professional development through webinars and other resources, and we stay up to date on issues within the higher education environment, providing statements and guidance on related topics as appropriate. And we wanted to share some facts and figures with you about the instruction section. The instruction section is the second largest section within ACRL, right behind the university library section. We have over 3,000 members, and our members come from a variety of institutions, including small private colleges, large research universities, and community colleges. And our members also come from a variety of different roles and job titles. Some examples here are student success librarian, reference and instruction librarian, humanities librarian. So your title doesn't have to have the word instruction in it. We all know that instruction is a part of many of our job titles within, in our academic library institutions. So it is a section for all of us who are involved in instruction. So during the session, we will be hearing from a couple of members of the instruction section who will share some thoughts about their volunteer experiences. So at this point, I would like to introduce or reintroduce Roz Busey to provide our first member profile.
Thanks, Abby. So as I mentioned, my name is Roz, and I work at the University of Nevada, Reno, and I'm the humanities librarian as well as an instruction coordinator. I'm also the membership committee chair for the instruction section. So why did I volunteer? I first joined the instruction section, I am sure, long ago when I was still a library student. And at the time it was really, to have my ear to the conversation, job announcements, but also discussions about instruction, especially as a early career librarian, getting my legs under me with respect to instruction and using the many resources that Abby just mentioned, like Primo and Sandbox and the discipline guides. When I actually volunteered to be on a committee, I'm sure part of it had to do with that, service requirement, the service to the profession. But what I have gotten out of it has been so much more than just that. When I moved to UNR, I was coming from a much smaller college in Boston. So while my immediate library was pretty small, there were a lot of other libraries in the area. Whereas, UNR is fairly geographically isolated from other academic libraries. So this is really a place for me to find my community. I can't think of a different professional group that is more relevant to the work that I do. And it's really great to have a network of colleagues across the country. And I love whenever I, browse a new issue of some journal or look at a post about instructional tips, recognizing the names of the people who are writing them from people I've actually worked with on this committee. I think that's also wonderful to have the opportunity to, shape the resources and the work that we do for ACRL, for other instruction librarians. The committee work has been fruitful. I think I've been on other committees where it's not really clear what we're doing. And you kind of spend the whole year doing your service and then you sort of feel like, well, what did I actually get done? And I think that my experience has been that this is a group of people who actually likes to get something done. And I will also say that for me, the fact that the instruction section is a virtual section has also been really helpful. I mean, I already mentioned that, UNR is sort of fairly geographically isolated from other academic libraries. But I also, these, first few years that I've been at UNR have been the parent of 2 young children, and really traveling to conferences is very difficult, if not impossible, at times. Funds are not always available. And then of course, with the pandemic, this section has already been very well positioned to continue doing the work that it does. So I've really appreciated that. In addition to my work with the membership committee, I also volunteer as a mentor for the instruction section. So I really like that there's that opportunity for, group work, committee work, that kind of contribution and service, and also to develop those one-on-one relationships. So I think that, like, no matter what you're trying, what you're looking for in a professional organization or in your service, there's something for you in the instruction section.
Thank you so much for that, Roz. And now we will move into the next section where we wanted to talk about some of the resources that are available through the instruction section to help assist all librarians in the work that they do. So I'll pass that over to Laura.
Great. Yep. So I will be talking about resources for staying up to date with what's happening both in the IS section and with instruction in general. And then resources for engaging with other members of the section. And then finally, resources for professional support. Next slide, please. Thank you. All right, so there are a few resources that can kind of help you stay updated with what's going on in IS and with instruction. And these include the IS blog, the newsletter, and ALA Connect. So the newsletter, if you aren't already familiar with that, comes out twice a year to your inbox, and it features articles, trends, and updates from the section. And then the blog features new members and those teaching librarian spotlights that we've already talked a little bit about. And you can find the discussion pages on ALA Connect. So ALA Connect's discussion pages, these are full of great questions, information, and ALA Connect is the place to go if you want to engage in conversation with other members of instruction section. You can also find instruction section on Facebook and on Twitter. And there's going to be things like webinars, links to webinars, podcasts, articles, and then information about what's going on in our section. All right, so finally, let's talk about the numerous resources, some of which we've already kind of presented to you that you may or may not be familiar with, that are available to you for professional support. So first up, we'll talk a little bit about the resources for pedagogy. Primo and the Framework Sandbox, these are two sites where you can find instructional content. Primo is the peer-reviewed instructional materials online database, and it contains peer-reviewed information literacy instructional materials. The Framework Sandbox, that's a place to discover ways to use the framework for information literacy for higher education in instructional settings. And then you can also there in the Sandbox, you can share your own activities, you can share teaching resources related to the framework, you can browse or search activities and resources shared by others. And you can search by the resource type, the frame addressed, or the discipline, and there's many other ways to search. So it's a really great resource and super easy to use. And then the Information Literacy in the Disciplines Committee publishes information on its information literacy in the disciplines guide on the ACRL website. So that guide contains information literacy standards and curricula developed by accrediting agencies, professional associations, and institutions of higher education. But beyond those standards and guidelines, there are other resources in the guide that include related research, things like scholarly articles and presentations that you can take a look at, and adaptable instructional materials. And then next I'll talk about technology. So this instructional technologies, tips and trends, this is typically published 4 times a year by the Instructional Technologies Committee. And each volume is going to discuss new, evolving, or even more familiar technologies that can be applied to the library instruction setting. Like the most recent issue, it addressed online proctoring software, so super relevant to what a lot of us are hearing about, talking about. And then looking back through the past couple of years, other issues have explored things like moving library instruction online, Zoom for library instruction, and diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility and instructional technology. So lots of really relevant hot topics there. And then next, this 5 things learning about. This is published once a year on a specific topic, and it highlights 5 things about that area. So in the past, this publication was a little bit more technology focused, but in recent years, it was renamed, and it now focuses on under-discussed or timely topics relevant to library instruction. Like the 2021 topic was trauma-responsive pedagogy. And then lastly, just a quick note that we host a variety of webinars throughout the year, and then those archived webinars can be accessed through our website.
Thank you, Laura. So now that you are familiar with what the instruction section does and some of the resources that we have available, we wanted to just give you a little overview of the structure of instruction section and how it all works. And before we jump into that, just a reminder that if you do have any questions, please go ahead and put those in the chat and we can start to answer those as we're going through. And you'll also have time at the end to ask questions as well. And so for structure, I am going to hand it over to the instruction section chair, Veronica.
Jane. So now that you have a better sense of the kind of work that we do in instruction section and the resources that are available, I can briefly offer some insight into structure, where the instruction section fits within ACRL and ALA, because I know as a new librarian and as a new member of ALA, ACRL instruction section, I wasn't always sure how those pieces fit together. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a really great kind of flow chart that was created by one of our instruction section members, I want to say maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And you can see that ALA is our parent organization that has 11 divisions, one of those being ACRL, Association for College and Research Libraries. And then within ACRL are various interest groups, committees, task forces, chapters, and sections, of which the instruction section is one of those 15. And then within our instruction section, we have various committees. So that's like our membership committee, a lot of the committees that have been mentioned already. Oh, and it looks like, just to point out really quickly, we had a quick question in chat that I just want to read out. Where can I access all of the resources that were previously mentioned? Thank you, Elizabeth. She posted that you can find most of the resources under the instruction tools and resources heading on the IS website, and went ahead and put a link to that as well. And this is also a good time for me to mention that our website is currently under construction. So we are in the process of updating it, and it should look a lot better in the next few months. Next slide, please. So these are the various standing committees that are available as service opportunities within the instruction section. I've been a member since becoming a librarian in 2007. It's been a while. And I've personally served on what used to be, it was named something else, but is now the inclusive pedagogy section, virtual engagement. And I've also served on the mentoring committee, but there's basically just a ton of different ways for you to get involved within the section. And you can volunteer to be a member. And then I know Carrie later on in this presentation will talk more about the volunteering process. So I'll leave that in her very capable hands. Next slide, please. So in addition to the committees that we have, there is also a larger instruction section advisory council. And this is made up of all of the committee chairs and vice chairs from the previously mentioned committees, and as well as some ex officio members who are people like our website administrator, newsletter editor, social media editor, among others. It's also made up of members of the executive committee, which I'll get to in just a moment, as well as any chairs that we may have of ongoing, really temporary task forces. We don't currently have any task forces right now, but we have in the past. An advisory council meets once a semester, and it's just a chance for everyone who is in a leadership position within the section to get together, share or voice concerns or opportunities, and learn more about the work of their colleagues. Next slide, please. So I mentioned in the previous slide the instruction section executive committee. So in addition to the volunteer appointed committees that we have within the section, we also have leadership at the section level. And those individuals include myself as chair, Carrie as vice chair. And basically what happens is you get elected into a vice chair position, become chair the next year, and then serve as past chair the year after that. In addition, we also seek nominations for and elect a secretary for the entire section. And after their year of service, they become an archivist within the section. We also, actually our numbers have changed a little bit. We have 6 members at large now, so we've actually grown a little bit, and they have 2-year staggered terms. And so the chair, vice chair, past chair, secretary, archivist, and members at large all comprise the executive committee. Next slide, please. So what do we do, right? This is a kind of ongoing question. So our executive committee is responsible for shaping the work and direction of our section. Everybody that serves on executive committee is a liaison to one of the other committees within the section. So they're the voice of any concerns, questions, new opportunities that committees might see. Those all get brought to executive committee, where we discuss and try to find solutions for any kind of issues that we may have. So as chair, I'm responsible for scheduling and setting agendas for meetings, working with our liaisons within ACRL to try and solve any problems, or I shouldn't say problems, just there's also good things, but also looking for opportunities as well, and just kind of making sure that our section is doing the work that we want to be doing in a way that's meaningful for all of us. Carrie Forbes, who's here today, is our vice chair. So she will be stepping into the chair role this summer. And she, in addition to being a liaison to instruction section committees, also has the very important, very time-consuming job of making all of the committee appointments for the coming year. And so she has also been a wonderful partner in terms of planning with me as chair, which is also a part of her role. And then our past chair is Nikat Gauss, and she stays on, thankfully so, chairs the Miriam Dudley Librarian of the Year Award, but also serves as liaison to student learning and information literacy committee, and is just there to answer questions, offer any kind of advice, things that worked for her as chair. So you see that like the way that this committee is structured really tries to do a good job in terms of like succession planning, so that we're not always starting from scratch every year. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Veronica. And
that's right.
so, yes.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you. And so again, as we mentioned, we wanted to just give a couple member profiles so that everyone can have an idea of, you know, what folks get out of being involved in instruction section. So our second member profile is going to be Liz. So I will go ahead and pass that over to you, Liz.
All right, can you all hear me? Perfect. Hello, I'm Liz Lang. I am a public service librarian at Ohio Wesleyan University. I have been on the IS membership committee for about 3 years now. This is my 3rd year here. I am in a different subcommittee as the orientation. I'm in a subcommittee that's currently working through some of the materials that we have online for new members, to make sure everything is up to date and kind of streamline some of those pieces. And then also taking a look at the membership committee's charge to make sure that we're doing everything that we need to, and that's all up to date. So that's what I've been working on. And then, so why did I volunteer? You know, I don't really even remember signing up for IS committee the first time, or the IS section the first time. I filled, as I was filling out the ACRL, ALA form, it just made sense. I was teaching at the time. Of course, I was going to be in the instruction section. And for the first few years, I didn't really think much about it. I used some of the resources, but didn't really do much, didn't really think about it. That was until I attended an ALA midwinter about 4 or 5 years ago. At this point, they were still doing in-person meetings, and I felt like I needed a break from some of the presentations, so I went to some of those meetings. And it was lovely, right? So I was sitting in a room full of people who cared about instruction, cared about librarianship, and were working towards doing something for the profession. It was really that first time that I felt like a library as a community instead of just the job that I'm doing. So pretty much right after that, I filled out the volunteer form. eventually got selected and have been on the membership committee. I've also worked a little bit with the Library Instruction Roundtable, so just trying to do some pieces. Then what do I get out of this? Honestly, it's just lovely to sit down with people from across the country, right? I can take a break from lesson planning and, campus politics, and I can just talk to other folks about librarianship and how to support new librarians, and it's great. Yeah, that's what I got.
Thank you so much for that, Liz. So as we move into the last sort of part of our presentation, we wanted to just talk a little bit about how you can get involved. And for this, I'm going to hand it over to Carrie.
Great, thank you. And you can go to the next slide right away if you'd like. As Veronica mentioned earlier, my name is Carrie Forbes, and it is the role of the vice chair to do the committee appointments for the following year. So if you're eager to participate in the instruction section, it's your lucky day. The volunteer form is open and we are accepting applications. So if you go to that link that's on the screen there, you'll be able to volunteer. This is the volunteer form for across ALA and ACRL. So if you specifically want to volunteer for the instruction section, you will need to drill down into ACRL and then go to the instruction section. And it will ask you a few questions about your interests, your background, have you done any other committee service? And then it will go through the list of the different committees that we have, and you have an option to volunteer for any that you're interested in. If you're willing or open to be on any committee, there is also an option to volunteer for any open slot within the instruction section. Those appointments generally start July 1st. So it runs on a fiscal year calendar. So, and they're generally 2-year appointments. So if you're appointed to a committee, it would be July 2022 through June of 2024 would be the majority of the appointments. How volunteers are chosen. So I currently have access to the system. We wait until the volunteer form closes on February 15th, and then I will go through and look to see the different who's volunteered for different committees based on what openings we have. We have roughly 10 people on each of our committees, and some people are rotating off and some people are continuing. And we try to keep a good balance between more experienced librarians who have been on instruction section committees before, and then balance that out with people who are new to the instruction section or new to librarianship, early career people. We are also specifically trying to get diversity as far as BIPOC librarians, people from community colleges and small colleges, a nice mix of organizations represented as well. You can go to the next slide. Okay, so I do just want to, before I go into the benefits, I do want to point out one other volunteer opportunity. If you go to the instruction section website, the link was posted in the chat, you'll see a blog post for some open administrator positions. These are not available through the volunteer form. You need to apply and send in a letter indicating your interest. If any of you have any background in website or newsletter editing or social media, we have several of those positions that are open as well. Those are also 2-year appointments. But we appoint people based on their background. I will say because of the pandemic and everybody's really struggling right now, that there's an even greater need than there was before to have volunteers. So If you have any of those skill sets or you're eager to learn, we would be happy to train you. So please reach out to me if you have any questions. The benefits of volunteering. So we're all telling our instruction section story. So I'll tell mine as well. So I have been a member of the instruction section since 2005. Like many of my colleagues here, I did initially volunteer because it was an expectation of my faculty librarian position that we have some service. But like everybody else, I have stayed a member since that time. I've been on a variety of committees. I really don't think we can undervalue this networking with colleagues in the profession. As a new librarian, I was working in a very rural regional university. I didn't know many other librarians except the librarians that I was working with. And so just that ability to be on a committee with someone and to have the names of other librarians across the country who do similar jobs to you was extremely invaluable. It also allows you to contribute to the profession in a meaningful way. So, if you feel like, what is my role in, helping further librarianship and helping academic librarians make an impact on teaching and learning across their campus, this is an opportunity to work on some very targeted projects that will allow you to feel like you're contributing to the larger profession. You do also gain leadership experience. So I started out as the secretary of a committee, which is often how we appoint newer members. Then I moved into a 2-year member role on the same committee. And then I ended up becoming the vice chair and then the chair. So I just sort of moved my way up on one committee. And then I was engaged with lots of other committees after that. So whether it's planning projects or webinars or whatever committee you get appointed to, you definitely get a lot of leadership experience. And I think it's leadership experience in a very safe, supportive environment with colleagues that understand that everyone's busy and has a lot going on. And they're really great about pitching in and helping you. And then I will also say that last one about learning more about ACRL and the instruction section. If you've ever had questions about how ALA and ACRL run, what does the board of directors do? How do they come up with these decisions about different policies and practices? You get a really interesting sort of inside scoop when you're part of the committee structure because you hear and see all the inner workings of a professional organization. And I think it's just really valuable as a professional in this field to hear the discussions that are happening. And then I already mentioned the help meet your service goals requirements. That's initially while I joined. I think that's just a small reason now why I continue to join. But if any of you have promotion or tenure requirements at your university, your participation on a committee, I have asked the chairs of committees to write letters of me for service as part of my promotion packets and things like that. So it's also really great for those service requirements. And I will just also add the networking piece is also very useful for jobs as well. So the library world is not as large as it may seem. Once you get involved in the instruction section, you'll meet a lot of different people. And so that networking also comes in handy if you ever want to transition to a different job. Chances are you will have been on a committee with someone who's working at one of those institutions or may have some background information for you. So it could be useful for those reasons as well. And I think that's the last slide for me, right?
Yes, thank you, Carrie. So we just wanted to, as we come to the end, just highlight a few upcoming events that different instruction section committees are hosting this year. So the instruction section framework for the information literacy sandbox committee is hosting 2 webinars coming up in April. One is an introduction to the framework sandbox, and second is engaging with the framework sandbox. So registration links, I'll put those in the chat in just a second if you're interested in those events. Our Teaching Methods Committee, they are also planning an upcoming events, Show Them You Care, incorporating compassionate teaching strategies into information literacy instruction. That is scheduled for March the 30th. With the presenter of Elizabeth B. White from Towson University. And I'm going to put the link to that in the chat as well coming up. So we just wanted to highlight a few of the types of things that different committees do that you may be interested in attending. And you don't need to be a member of Instruction Section to attend a lot of these events. So just keeping that in mind as well. All right, so we are moving into the question phase. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can share a few links in the chat, but we'll just open it up at this time for questions. So please go ahead and put those in the chat, and we'd love to hear what you're thinking. So we had a question come in. Are there different communities within departments, such as I'm a new science librarian looking to connect with other science librarians? Anyone who wanted to answer that question?
I'll volunteer an answer. So if you wanted to stay within instruction section, I would say that people who are on these committees are not just straight up instruction librarians, but are often people who are subject librarians or liaisons with different specialties. So you will encounter other science librarians within this section, but also just like full disclosure, we have people who are members of instruction section and also science and technology section, which is another section within ACRL. So it's sometimes nice to do a bit of both for differing perspectives.
So we also had a question, is there a list of committees somewhere? And I think that Roz went ahead and put that in the chat. So that should be available there as well. Are there any instruction librarians from outside the United States who participate in this group?
I can give that one a shot. So I don't know, because it's the Association of College and Research Libraries, which is associated with the American Library Association. We don't have a huge international presence, but I have met a number of Canadian colleagues that are members of the section. And then we will have an opening posted a bit later for liaison to IFLA, which is the International Federation of Library Associations. So if any of you are interested in international librarianship, a lot of the different sections, including the instruction section, do have liaisons with IFLA, which is where you would find most of the international librarians.
Thank you, Carrie. We also had a question, are you looking for any specific skills? And I know Veronica has to leave, so thank you, Veronica. So I can take a shot at that. Basically, I think, there's a lot of different roles that you could play. There's a lot of different committees that you could be involved in. So I think that no matter what your skills are, there's probably some use that we could have for you. So, people, at least from my perspective, have different instruction roles. Some people, you know, in our instructions all they do, some instructions only a part of what they do. So you don't necessarily have to, you know, be one kind of teaching or, you know, one kind of job that you have. There's a range of different types of jobs and roles that people have that are involved. So I think that we're really open, you know, as long as you're interested in being involved and, you know, willing to engage, we would love to have folks join. Mhm. So we had a question, are you looking for submissions to the blog?
I believe the blog is usually committees that post with information. But there are some other opportunities to contribute expertise in different areas. So for example, we have a virtual engagement committee that puts on different, where you can lead a discussion in a certain area. And they will have a call very soon for people to submit proposals. And as part of that, there is also, you put together a small blog post, but most of the blog posts are connected to the committees or presentations or sessions that the committees are doing. But we're very into professional development. We're always doing webinars. So if you're interested in getting your feet wet a little bit by doing, you know, a pretty low stakes presentation or leading a discussion, the instruction section has a lot of great opportunities to do that.
Great, thank you. So we had another question. I may have missed this earlier in the presentation, but how frequently do each of the committees meet?
I can try to take this one if you'd like, Jane. And maybe others can chime in about their other committee work. But for the membership committee, I mean, I think that on the website, it technically says that we meet, you know, our first meeting is towards the beginning of the, you know, end of summer, beginning of fall. And then, you know, again, sort of the middle of the year and again, towards the time that our, you know, annual report is due, sort of May, June. But I think each year the sort of meeting schedule is kind of negotiated anew with the new leadership and members of each committee. So what we're doing this year, and I think what we did last year too for the membership committee, is the whole committee meets about every other month. And then we've broken up the work of the whole committee into sort of subcommittees that are working on particular tasks. And then they're charged with convening in some way in the intervening months. So they can either schedule a meeting in the intervening months, or if the work that they're doing only requires sort of asynchronous online work, that's okay too. So that's the way that we're doing it with the membership committee.
And I can just add, so for the subcommittee that planned this webinar, we have basically met once a month virtually for about an hour or so. Sometimes it usually doesn't take that much. And then in that meeting, we would each talk about what we're going to do, and we would do a little bit of work outside of those meetings to kind of organize things together. So it's, you know, it's a few hours of work a month. It's not a massive time commitment, but it does require, and depending on what you're doing, like in the time leading up to this webinar, we put in a little bit more work than maybe we'll do for the rest of this semester, since this was our subcommittee's big project for the year. So it will change depending on what your group is actually working on. So we had a comment. Yeah, so every time I try to click the volunteer form on the link provided, it brings me back to my ALA profile homepage. Any idea from where to go from there, or where I'm going wrong?
That is a great question. The last time I saw someone who had that problem, they were not actually like their membership to ALA had actually expired. So that would be the first thing I would recommend checking. You do need to be a current member of ALA, ACRL, and the instruction section in order to volunteer. But if you believe that you are a member and you're still getting that loop, just let me know and I can double check.
All right, so we have a few more minutes if there are any last questions. So Kim added, I'm a member and I'm not having that problem, so it could be perhaps something to do with related to the status.
Yeah, I just checked, I'm able to access it. So that would be my first thing. And then also the librarian thing that we all do, which is to try a different browser as well, just in case it's cached something.
Mhm. So we'll give it just a few more seconds to see if any last questions pop up. So we have some thanks coming in. And thank you all for attending as well. Wonderful. So it looks like we don't have any more questions coming in. So we'll go ahead and wrap things up. Thank you all again for spending time with us today. We hope that it was helpful to you, and we hope that we might see some of you engaging with instruction section in the future. And even if you are not able to join at this time, as we mentioned, resources such as the Primo website or the Sandbox website, you do not have to be a member of instruction section to use those. Those are available to all instruction librarians, so that we hope that you will take advantage of those resources that we have for you. Anyone else wanted to say one final goodbye before we sign off? All right, I think we are good then. So have a great afternoon, everyone. And thanks again for attending.